Imagine the ultimate tank. A tank so accurate that it can be used as a kind of overpowered sniper. A tank so safe that it can survive the onset of a nuclear war. A tank so meticulously detailed with crew comfort in mind that it comes with a built-in kitchenette and toilet. We're talking about the British Challenger 2 main battle tank, and it's been vital to the Ukrainian armed forces' efforts in fighting off Russia's invasion. And it's doing this by taking on a role it was never expected to perform. Let's take a closer look at this beast of a machine and the innovative ways that Ukraine is using it. In March 2023, Ukraine became the third army in the world to field the Challenger 2 after the UK and Oman. The UK sent 14 of its Challenger 2 fleet to Ukraine after training Ukrainian tank operators and commanders to use the system at Lulworth Camp in Dorset, England. At the time of delivery, there were indications that the UK might send another 14 later, but that seems not to have happened, at least not officially. The manufacturers, Vickers Defence Systems, now known as Rheinmetall BAE Systems Land, produced 408 Challenger 2s for the British Army and a further 38 for Oman between 1993 and 2002. The British Ministry of Defence proposed retiring 79 of its remaining fleet of 227 Challenger 2s still in service with the British Army. The remaining 148 were to be upgraded to the tank's successor, the Challenger 3. It's unclear whether the tanks supplied to Ukraine came from the to-be-retired or the to-be-upgraded segments of the British fleet. However, the tanks delivered appear to be the standard Challenger 2 models rather than those upgraded under the Challenger 3 Life Extension project, which replaces the 120mm rifled gun with a new smoothbore version. Ukraine's Challenger 2s retain their original rifled L30A1 cannon, praised by crews for its exceptional precision, and have received additional field modifications, including top-mounted slat armor to defend against drone attacks. Now, 14 tanks are not a particularly impressive number, especially when compared to the number of tanks that have been used and lost during 3.5 years of grueling attritional warfare. Russia is estimated to have lost over 13,000 armored vehicles during the war, including over 4,000 tanks. Ukraine, meanwhile, is estimated to have lost only around 1/3 of that number. But Ukraine started the war with up to 10 times fewer tanks than Russia, so the losses are just as devastating. Indeed, 1 year into the war, Ukraine was believed to have already lost over half of its main battle tanks, the Ukrainian-made T-64BV. At the time, it was estimated that Ukraine would need deliveries of around 1,500 tanks to successfully fight off the Russians. The 14 Challenger 2 tanks represent less than 1% of that total, an insignificant amount in the face of Ukraine's broader requirement. However, the UK's decision to send the tanks may have changed the direction of the war. Before the delivery, Western nations have been reluctant to send heavy equipment like tanks and armored vehicles to Ukraine. This had been largely due to Russian President Vladimir Putin's warnings that sending Western tanks to Ukraine would be crossing a red line and would lead to escalation of the conflict, possibly even to the use of nuclear weapons. It turned out to be one more of Putin's red lines that Ukraine supporters have crossed with impunity. Ukraine has subsequently received over 300 modern Western battle tanks, primarily of the US-made M1 Abrams and German Leopard 1 and Leopard 2 varieties. It's also received around 60 PT-91 Twardey tanks from Poland and over 400 Soviet T-72 tanks, mainly from Poland and the Czech Republic. These arrivals have powered up Ukraine's pre-war inventory of Soviet-era T-64, T-72 and T-80 tanks in several variants, as have the 17 modern Russian T-90A and T-90M tanks captured on the battlefield. The Challenger 2, like its predecessors and all other main battle tanks fielded by Ukraine, was designed primarily as an offensive weapon. Its heavy armor and firepower, which we'll discuss in more detail shortly, are intended to lead infantry advances. Their purpose was supposed to be mainly taking out enemy tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, and fortified positions, clearing the way for infantry to advance in relative safety behind them. However, like so many other aspects of this war, that's not how it worked out. In the initial stages of the war, both Russia and Ukraine used tanks in this traditional role. One side used tanks offensively to clear the way for infantry, and the other using tanks defensively, primarily as anti-tank weapons. Russia used thousands of tanks in its initial failed assault on Kyiv in February 2022, and Ukraine used them to greater effect in its successful counter-offensive of September 2022. That campaign resulted in the liberation of thousands of miles of occupied territory in the Kharkiv region. However, within a year, the status quo had been turned on its head. The introduction of small, deadly FPV drones en masse into the conflict by Ukraine wreaked havoc on Russia's tanks. Around 2/3 of its massive tank losses are attributed to drone strikes. As a result, Russia, to a large extent, stopped using tanks on the front lines and resorted to different tactics. Ukraine was also forced to stop using tanks in its traditional infantry-leading role after its failed counteroffensive of 2023 in the Donetsk and Zaporizhia regions. Ukraine threw its Challengers, Abrams, and Leopards wholeheartedly into a full-scale offensive. However, they were ultimately unable to breach the first of 3 intense, layered defensive lines. These rings of anti-tank ditches and concrete obstacles, known as Dragon's Teeth, combined with remorseless artillery, air and drone barrages, proved too stubborn even for the West's most advanced battle tanks. Ukraine was forced to withdraw with heavy casualties and losses of equipment, including the first confirmed loss of a Challenger tank. The Challengers again made headlines a year later during Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region. Footage shows at least a few Challengers leading the charge into Russia, which reportedly inflicted heavy damage during the initial push. Russia eventually managed to push Ukraine out of Kursk 8 months later, publishing footage of 3 more Challengers being hit and damaged, if not outright destroyed, along the way. By mid-2025, Ukraine had built its own lines of anti-tank ditches and Dragon's Teeth all across the front lines to repel grinding Russian offensives across the front. With the proliferation of FPV drones watching from the skies, nothing on either side can surface or move without being spotted and targeted, usually within minutes. Which means nothing on the battlefield is safe, not even the heaviest battle tank in the Ukrainian army. Losing tanks worth millions of dollars to drones that cost thousands quickly became unsustainable for both sides. So by mid-2025, it's become rare to see tanks being used to spearhead assaults on either sides, but that doesn't mean they're still not being used. Instead, Ukraine's tanks, especially its prized Abrams, Leopards and Challengers, have an ingenious new role: infantry support. And as it turns out, the Challenger 2 may be more effective in this role than the one for which it was designed. One of the main reasons for this is the Challenger 2's top-notch protection. The turret and hull are protected by a second-generation Cobham armor, also known as Dorchester. A different form of this armor is used on the M1 Abrams. While the exact composition is a closely guarded secret, it's known to be a multi-layered composite material comprised of several kinds of metals, ceramics, and possibly other materials. Cobham armor is said to have at least twice the mass efficiency of rolled homogeneous armor against high-explosive anti-tank or heat projectiles. That level of toughness has already saved Ukrainian lives. In one example, it enabled a Ukrainian tank crew to survive a direct hit from a high-explosive round during a rocket attack by Russian helicopters. The damage was 720 millimeters deep, but the crew inside survived. The tank could still move and complete its mission, according to the tank commander. Despite the heavy damage, the Challenger 2 safely transported the crew to a secure location. After repairs, it was promptly returned to action. But the safety features don't end there. The tank also comes standard with a nuclear, biological and chemical protection or NBC system located in the turret bustle. Its shape is also designed to minimize its radar signature, making it more difficult for Russia to detect and target. In addition, there are 5 L8 smoke grenade discharges on each side of the turret, and the Challenger 2 can additionally create smoke by injecting diesel fuel into the exhaust manifolds. Even better, Ukrainian operators say that the smoke clears after about a second, giving them an advantage when facing off against Russian tanks. The sooner the smoke clears, the sooner the tank can start firing again. According to them, the smoke discharged by a Russian T-72 or T-90 takes at least 5 seconds to clear, giving the Challenger 2 a crucial edge in a direct tank-to-tank gunfight. The ammunition storage is also designed with safety in mind. It features blowout panels in the storage compartments that direct explosions away from the crew, and the propellant charges are stored in fireproof lining around each individual charge to reduce the risk of fire if they're struck. Another feature that the Ukrainian Challenger operators appreciate is the focus on crew comfort. The tank's interior layout combines crew safety and operational efficiency in ways that few others can match, and even adds a dash of luxury. The Challenger 2 is built for a crew of 4, a driver, a gunner, a loader, and the commander, who are accommodated on 2 decks. The interior includes a turret basket, driver seats, and an engine compartment housing a replica of the Perkins CV-12 engine in model versions, though the actual engine is part of the vehicle's powertrain. The driver is positioned in the center front of the hull and controls the tank from a reclining, or even while completely horizontal, position using something that looks like a 1990s game controller. The remaining crew are located within the turret, with the commander on the right, the gunner in front and below the commander, and the loader on the left side of the turret. Like all tanks, the interior is far from luxurious. That said, comparing the Challenger 2's legroom to that of a Russian T-72 or Ukrainian T-64BV is like comparing the legroom available in first class to a seat in economy class on a passenger airliner. Even more luxurious, at least by tank standards, is that the Challenger 2 also provides the crew with a kettle, a multi-cooker, and even a toilet. The toilet is rudimentary, requiring a bag to capture the contents to be disposed of later, but it's probably still appreciated on the battlefield, especially with FPV drones lurking everywhere, waiting to pounce on hapless crew members popping out of the tank to relieve themselves. The British Army has long placed special emphasis on crew safety and comfort. However, that's not the only reason these luxuries were installed in the Challenger 2. They were included for use in the long term. The tank was designed with a possible nuclear war in mind. Features like the kettle, multi-cooker and toilet combined with the MBC kit were intended to enable the crew to survive for 3 days following the initial nuclear strikes. Nonetheless, the extra touches to enhance crew safety and comfort appear to be highly appreciated by Ukrainian soldiers who operate the tanks. The fire control and sights are pretty nifty too. The digital fire control computer from Canadian company Computing Devices Co. contains 2 32-bit processors, and additional systems such as a battlefield information control system can be added. It's a sophisticated system that compensates for factors such as wind speed and humidity. For targeting and battlefield awareness, the commander has a panoramic Sargam VS580-10 gyro-stabilized sight with a laser rangefinder at its disposal, along with 8 periscopes that provide 360-degree vision. Both gunner and commander also have access to thermal imaging and night vision on their sights and monitors, provided by the Thermal Observation and Gunnery Sight 2 or TOGS 2 system from Thales. The thermal imaging is reportedly so powerful that it can pick up rabbits running through the forest. The gunner also has a stabilized primary sight using a laser rangefinder with a range of 660 feet to 6.2 miles. What this all means is well summed up by a loader in a tank crew with the 82nd Airborne Assault Bukovina Brigade, identified only as Stanislav. If 2 tanks appear, one at 1,800 meters and the other at 2,300 meters, a laser measurement is taken for both tanks, and the computer stores the data for both targets. When the commander decides which one to engage, the gunner can simply switch between targets with the press of a single button. These powerful targeting capabilities are a large part of the main benefit that Challenger 2s provide to Ukraine, their pinpoint accuracy at range. The rest comes down to the tank's main gun, a 120mm or 4.7-inch 55 caliber long L30A1 tank gun. It's a serious weapon made from high-strength electroslag remelting steel with a chromium alloy lining and insulated by a thermal sleeve. It's fitted with a muzzle reference system and fume extractor and is controlled by the all-electric control and stabilization system we just discussed. What makes this gun unique among all NATO's main battle tank is the fact that, unlike the smoothbore guns on other tanks, this one is rifled. The helical grooves machined into the L30A1's barrel make shells fired from its spin, which improves their aerodynamic stability and accuracy. That's especially useful when you're firing high-explosive squash head or HESH rounds, in addition to the armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding Sabot or APF-SDS rounds, typically fired from smoothbore tank guns. HESH rounds have a range of around 5 miles more than APF-SDS and are more effective against buildings and thin-skinned vehicles. The British penchant for using HESH rounds was one of the main motivations behind opting for the L30A1 gun for the Challenger 2 as opposed to a more standardized NATO tank gun. The decision turned out to be a double-edged sword. On the plus side, the L30A1's rifled barrel is what allows it to fire with the precision of a sniper, but at a range of up to 5 miles and with much greater destructive power than any sniper's bullet. The tank can carry up to 49 main armament rounds in the turret and hull, a combination of L27A1 APF-SDS rounds, also known as Charm-3, L31 HESH and L34 white phosphorus smoke rounds as required. The turret can rotate through 360 degrees in 9 seconds, meaning the Challenger 2 can rain down multiple instances of high-precision hell across the widest possible arc in quick succession. The Challenger 2 is also armed with 2 7.62mm machine guns with 4,200 rounds to feed them. There is an L94A1 X34 chain gun to the left of the main gun and an L37A2 machine gun mounted on the pintle on the loader's hatch ring. The Challenger 2 can also mount a Leonardo Enforcer remote control weapon system, which can carry an L37A2 machine gun, 12.7mm heavy machine gun, or a 40mm automatic grenade launcher. But it's that rifled L30A1 that's helped Ukraine create a new battlefield strategy, one ideally suited for a high-precision artillery/infantry support role. Instead of clearing the way for infantry, you'll now typically find Ukraine's Challenger 2s a few miles back from the front lines, nestled under Ukrainian-controlled tree lines. They're tasked with firing at fortified positions and bunkers in Russian-controlled tree lines several miles away. In this strategy, they work hand-in-hand with the drones that have become ubiquitous across the front lines. Ukrainian surveillance and FPV drones provide targeting coordinates and help correct the tank's shots. Meanwhile, large attack drones attack the same and nearby positions. Once those positions are cleared and suitably softened up, the infantry can advance in relative safety and seize them. The accuracy of the Challenger 2's main gun is what makes it ideal for this kind of high-precision mobile artillery. The tanks hide under cover of tree lines because a couple of miles is well within range of Russian FPV drones. Although tree lines offer line of sight protection from drones, staying too long in one place after firing, the tank is bound to be targeted. However, for all the benefits it provides, the rifled main gun is also one of the Challenger 2's main drawbacks. All that friction caused by the spinning shells means that the rifled gun begins to wear out after about 500 rounds, compared to the smoothbore 120mm gun used in the Abrams that lasts for around 1,500 rounds. That means the Challenger's gun needs more regular maintenance and repairs, but unfortunately, there's an acute and ever-worsening shortage of spares. Neither the L30A1 gun nor their main shells are being actively produced and haven't been for at least 2 decades. The UK's production lines for rifled 120mm ammunition ceased several years ago. Short of stripping one from the UK's retired fleet, assuming any of those tanks have guns in good working order, there are no replacements should one of Ukraine's L30A1s break. Ammunition is also finite, and Ukraine is steadily working its way through what remains of it. Also, because the gun is being phased out and the UK's existing stock of Challenger 2s is in the process of being upgraded into the Challenger 3, the number of mechanics available to maintain and service the tank is also dwindling. The UK is well aware of the issue and has acted on it. In February 2025, the British MOD extended the contract it had awarded to Babcock International Group in 2023 to support Ukraine's military for an additional 15 months. The contract involves ensuring that Ukraine's UK-supplied vehicles, especially the Challenger 2 tanks, remain operational. That includes both fixing damaged tanks and, perhaps more importantly, training Ukrainian crews to carry out their own battlefield repairs. The program will also manage the supply chain and provide spare parts, ensuring a steady flow of essential resources. That should be music to the ears of the 82nd Airborne. It's unclear how many of Ukraine's Challengers are operational today, but by March 24, 2024, a year after their delivery, only half were operational. Only one had been critically damaged by a Russian Lancet drone, and one was being used for training. The other 5 were non-operational simply because the repairmen didn't have the time or spares to repair them. Ukraine is also limited in how it can use the tanks due to the Ukrainian terrain and conditions. At 62.5 tons fully loaded, the Challenger 2 is around 7 tons heavier than the M1 Abrams, yet it only has a 1,200 horsepower engine compared to the Abrams' 1,500 horsepower. In the soft Ukrainian soil, which turns to mud in the spring and fall, the Challenger has proven to be somewhat underpowered and prone to getting stuck in the mud. Still, try and take their Challengers away from the 82nd and you're likely to face savage resistance. As one tank commander identified by the call sign Hera puts it, it's really like a sniper rifle. It allows you to strike enemy targets at long distances. You don't need to get too close. You can fire calmly from cover and then pull back. And once done, you can even make yourself a celebratory hot beverage without even leaving the tank. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the weapons that define our times and the innovative ways they're being used. And thank you as always for watching.